Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Cosmic podcast. And today it's my utmost pleasure to have my mentor and friend, astrologer Arielle Guttman, with me to talk about the upcoming Libra Cazimi Venus star point, various names, that's happening this weekend, October the 22nd, at 29 Libra for the first Venus star point since 1879. This is, I know we've got eclipses coming. Everybody's excited about eclipses, and they're important, of course, but this star point is a major shift for all of us collectively. But before we talk to Arielle, I just want to point out that Arielle is not only the writer of this amazing book, Venus Star Rising, New Cosmology for the 21st Century, where you can find out what your own personal Venus star point is and your own personal five-pointed star, because the Venus cycle makes a five-pointed pentagram star. But it also kind of gives you details about relationships and everything. And this book's really accessible for astrologers and non-astrologers or people who only know the very basics. So I did want to plug your book first. I also want to mention that Arielle was on a symposium with the Cosmic Intelligence Agency over the last few days, which I signed up for and haven't managed to watch all of yet, but she was on with Kelly M. Hunter.
7 hours. I'm not surprised.
It was. I know, they're always so long.
But it's something, even if you do an hour a week for the next 7 weeks, it's really,
Yes. And we're going to be under the Libra star for the next 100 years. So, you can afford to do an hour a week. Yes.
Do an hour a decade.
But I am going to post the link to the symposium in the show notes. It's well worth signing up for. Arielle, she's only going to be on with me for an hour talking about this star point. Because as you all know, I work with Venus all the time as well, and I'm actually certified in Arielle's star point work. But it's just such an exciting shift to me. So welcome, Arielle. Thank you for being here. I know you've been so busy talking about this.
It's dizzying now. It's sort of like when it rains, it pours. It really pours. I thought of that expression the other night. When you're hot, and when you're not, you're not. Yeah. It's sort of like, these things come and they're like the media and everything, the social media, everything is on it, over and over and over again. And then suddenly it falls away and nobody's talking about it again. So I may as well take
and we're on to the next thing.
I may as well seize the moment, but I'm happy to be here. And I'm delighted to have you as one of my Venus Star Point teachers and counselors, because we do have a program in certifying astrologers in this method. And Louise did incredibly well on her the exam that she submitted for to become qualified and certified. And I recommend this for other people who want to really use this as part of their practice.
I do too. It's very paradigm shifting work, to be quite honest, and I'm only just starting to touch the surface of really integrating it into my work. But right now I'm kind of really interested in it more at a collective level because of this shift into the Libra star. So yeah, you tell us a little bit more about it, Arielle, and what you think about it.
Well, the shift into the Libra star, I think, is important. Every star point shift is important because Venus star is a slow moving rotational clock that operates behind the zodiac. We don't always see it. We don't always know it's there, but it is there. And it in its pentagram. So, when we say Cazimi, what we really mean is a conjunction of the sun and Venus viewed from Earth. But it is actually the Earth and Venus together going around the sun that make this Cazimi. Our kiss kiss of Venus, I've heard it called, I've seen it called. And also, of course, the conjunction of Venus and the Sun. So there are a number of ways to find these, Sun-Venus conjunctions. And the beauty of the Venus cycle is that these conjunctions over an 8-year period make a 5-pointed star, a pentagram, a full pentagram of morning stars, and a full pentagram of evening stars. So actually 2 stars are created in 8 years. And when I discovered that pattern, to tell you that I was profoundly moved by the beauty of how Venus has embroidered that tapestry in the sky over time. And once one star is finished, another one's created. And so she just keeps creating stars perpetually and perpetually. Again, this is with Earth. And so what do we take from Earth? Here we are on Earth, our connection to Venus and our partnership with Venus, it's really a partnership, is beautiful. And it's something that I think makes us want to dance and sing and express joy. And it makes us move. It made me, it just moved through me like, it just shot through me like, I don't know, this incredible light. And working with the material the whole time I was, in process of creating the book was that way too. I could not wait to get up every morning and get to work on more of the Venus stars. So it actually there's a visceral feeling you can feel from working with it. And I've heard some of my Venus Star Point teachers say the same thing, that when they discovered it, it was like, oh, I just know I want to work with this, So
I've been the same. I actually started working with Venus because I think like you, Venus comes to you rather than you going to Venus. In 2017, I had a dream. I woke up and was like, oh, I'm actually going to do a Venus retrograde class. I was like, really? Okay. And I just did a Venus retrograde class. I followed all the nudges, and that was the 2017 retrograde, and I'll be running my next class next summer. But since then, I've taken your certification, I've read your books, I've read all the Adam Gainsbourg book on Venus, anything Adam I can get my hand.
Adam has a wonderful book too. And if you really want to go into the Venus cycle, I would look at them both, because they're both. But you're right about Venus comes to you. This came to me. I really wasn't thinking that I was going to write another book at that time, and had no clue that I was going to write one about Venus. And then, I started researching, like you, the retrograde patterns, and saw the pentagram. You probably saw it too when you were thinking, okay, I'm going to teach a Venus retrograde class. You're going to look at them all, and you're going to see point to point, retrograde to retrograde, that cycle. So that star is a beautiful pattern. And really the essence of it is that we are all born at a certain time when the Venus star clock is making 5 points at specific degrees around the zodiac. And so my next question, of course, was, well, what are those degrees? Like, when was I born? And that was another revelation to me that said things about my chart. They took planets from my chart that I wasn't paying a lot of attention to, and really brought them into the forefront. Because if you've got, for instance, the planet Uranus hooked on one of your star points exactly, whether it's your hand or your foot or, your head point, it's kind of like, Uranus is a very operative principle in your life. That's just the way it's going to be. And, my moon was there, and that's a very operative point. And I had other planets there too, but Saturn, yes, we work hard and diligently for Saturn. Yeah. But, yeah, but I realized that it's an expression through Venus, that the planets that come through the Venus pentagram um, are sort of wanting to be expressed more fully in your life through the joyful aspect. And what's funny about having Saturn on one of my 5 points is that I used to tell people, my Saturn's in Virgo, and I used to tell people a long time ago that I'd read for that had Virgo planets or a lot of sixth house planets or whatever. I would say things like, well, the song that comes to mind is from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it's Whistle While You Work. And, you know, the dwarves are all marching off to work, and they're going, whistle while you work. And I was thinking, if you've got all these planets in the sixth or all these planets in Virgo, you're going to have to really love your work. And so if you're loving it, you're going to be whistling about it. And I thought that's so funny. Then later, all these years later, I discovered my Saturn in Virgo's right on that star point, one of the star points. And I thought, well, it's true. I do love my work. And you know, it obviously loves me because it never lets me off. You know, it doesn't give me a whole lot of time off.
Arielle's even tried to escape to Greece too.
Yes, exactly. I have, and not only escape to Greece, but be with somebody who absolutely doesn't want me to work at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know. And it's like, oh, this is funny. This is really funny.
Oh, that brings me just to something, talking of, because the Venus star point is absolutely amazing for looking at your relationships too, by the way. My husband is actually on one of my helping hands, but his Venus star point is, but if you don't know your partner's time of birth or your own, the Venus star point, you can look at a lot of stuff on it without knowing the time. I don't know my husband's time of birth either, Arielle. You don't know your partner's either.
I don't. Yeah, I was speaking about that with Chris Brennan last week.
Yes, that's where I heard it.
Podcast. He says, he said, this presents a problem when people are dating people and they have no idea what time they were born. And I go, I know. I'm living with that too. And, you know, you always want to go, oh, maybe it's this sign because this just happened, you know, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I kind of have
but the Venus star is not going to change by the time of
the
birth.
Venus star won't. All you need is your date
of
birth, month, day, and year. You look up on a little table somewhere, anywhere, everywhere these days. Find
in this book.
Yeah, in that book. And I think even if you Google, find your Venus star point.
Yeah,
it's probably available now. You know, it's when the book came out in 2011, it was slow, you know, it was just a whole new concept. And, you know, I was given that subtitle, A New Cosmology for the 21st Century. And I thought, okay, you know, I didn't make that up. That was the way it came. And I thought, okay, it might take a couple of decades for people to really get into this. But, you know, it's now 11 years this year. It'll be going on 12 in March. So that's its first Jupiter return. Because it came out with Jupiter in Aries, actually.
Well, do you mind if I share the chart? And then I know you've got a couple of things to share as well.
Sure.
Now that you've mentioned that Jupiter's in Aries, I'm like, oh, good segue.
Okay.
Because this is a PDF of the chart, and I've taken out a lot of stuff so it's not too confusing.
Okay.
This is the Venus star point, or Cazimi, the conjunction up here at the top of the chart. Ignore where the location and the houses, because it will be different places for everybody. And this Venus star point, to my mind, I actually looked back at the last one that was on October the 22nd, 1771, that started the Libra star point last time. And of course, we didn't know of the dwarf planets. We didn't know of half these extra trans-Neptunian planets and things. So this
We
Venus
didn't
star
even
point
know
has,
about Pluto. We didn't know about
no, we
Neptune.
didn't.
You know.
But
Yeah.
they also were not aspecting it anyway. So to my mind, this Venus star point is going to, I mean, I think we all know that we're moving into a new age, a new paradigm, and some major big collective shifts are happening. I think this is demonstrated by this chart. For a start, we've got a T square. The Venus star point is opposing Eris, who is the goddess of discord in Aries. I see her as more the truth revealer, and square to Pluto. So we've got a cardinal T square that's kind of bringing radical discord and change. It's conjunct Haumea, which is birth, rebirth. I'd already seen that one. Kelly Hunter spoke about Manway, which is at 0 Aries, but Jupiter's in Aries. So there we have the Jupiter return of your work.
That's another thing I hadn't considered, because this week is kind of off the charts for me right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And Uranus was at 0 Aries when the book was published. Uranus.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I was going to say, was it Uranus or Neptune? Yeah, of course, it was Uranus. Uranus was at 0 Aries. Neptune hasn't gotten to Aries yet.
Wow. Good heavens.
Yeah, and so then, here's Jupiter. Yeah, and Jupiter return. Yeah.
Yeah, Jupiter return of your work. I won't speak to Manway because that's Kelly Hunter's kind of discovery, and I've not studied her. But again, that symposium, if you want to know more about that from that presentation, there's a lot about that. I'd already noticed Sedna, but if we notice, it's all at these end degrees of signs. Pluto's going to move into Aquarius soon. Sedna is about to move into Gemini. Haumea is about to move into Scorpio. And these are all, there's a book by Alison Chester Lambert, who called all these dwarf planets the starry messengers. It feels like they're bringing in some really new stuff, as we move into the new paradigm, the new age. And I kind of agree with her. You know, Sedna's got this 11,400 year orbit, so it's associated with huge cycles of climate change. So we're not just entering a Venus, a Libra star point 100-year period of air. We also have these outer planets bringing in this big change collectively. But look, Sedna and Jupiter, and now I've discovered Manway, thanks to Kelly Hunter, are pointing right at the star point, slightly out of sign, but that's a finger of fate, a finger of God as well. So what would you like to say about that?
I don't know much about Manway either, but I was tickled to see Jupiter at 0 Aries, even though it's retrograde, but 0 Aries for this initiation into the Libra cycle of the next 110 years, that we're going to be having Libra star points. And I was also really happy that Kelly also talked about Haumea being conjunct this new Libra star point, because Haumea up there in 29 Libra is the Hawaiian fertility goddess. And so what are we birthing? We are giving birth to a new world. But, you know, as the star point enters a sign, it enters at 29 degrees because the Venus star clock moves in a clockwise direction against the zodiac rather than in the flow of the signs in the zodiac, the way the planets move. So 29 Libra is actually the very first Libra star point, and 0 Scorpio is the last Scorpio star point, which we will have in 2026. I have been seeing for at least a decade now that the 2020s was going to be a major turnover, changeover, regrouping, whatever you want to call it, retooling of the world. Some ways in a good way, and some ways in a challenging way. because of this, not only the star point change squaring Pluto, and the flipping from Libra now, 4 years from now, back to Scorpio, and then 8 years from now, back to Libra to stay. So there's this Libra Scorpio cusp. Anybody who's born on the Libra Scorpio cusp is going to be feeling these changes impact their life for the whole decade. Birthdays from about October, let's say October 21st to about October 24th, are really going to be more or less feeling, you know, all of this stuff that's going on now. And the other thing about you showing this chart, which it reminded me of, is I have a colleague in Athens, Greece, Angela Tiki, and she has presented a work that I thought was really brilliant at a conference she hosted in Greece a few years ago. And it was about the birth of democracy and the chart of the building of the Parthenon, Athena's temple on the Acropolis. And she was able to get it into a pretty, looking at history and whatever, she was able to come up with a chart for it. And I was shocked to see, not shocked, but I was like, wow, this chart that featured the cardinal signs, you know, just really strongly emphasized, but in the late degree cardinal signs from, let's say, 22 degrees of cardinal up to about 28 degrees or 29 degrees of cardinal, that I thought that everybody, and then I started looking at, you know, for the building of the Acropolis, or for the opening of it, whatever, the actual finishing of it. And then I started looking at all these world leaders charts and countries charts and seeing how many charts had this, had multiple planets in those degrees of cardinal signs. And so how they were hooked into that whole concept. I've also talked about democracy, and especially in America and the US, because we all know that Pluto is returning to the US chart for the first time ever since its inception. It's a 248-year cycle, Pluto. The Venus star is 251 years. So 3 years after the Pluto return, the US gets its first Venus star point return, which I think will also be huge. That will take place in 2026 at the last Scorpio point, because the US has a 1 degree Scorpio star point, and that last star point will be 0 Scorpio. So it will be completing
that's going to be
the journey. And it's exactly 250 years since the 2026 is 250 years from the inception of the country. So
that's going to be very interesting.
You know, do we need, I mean, are we going through a changeover of, I think because Pluto's a little bit less than the Venus star, the way that I have actually determined this to be working is that we'll have a Pluto transit to anything, and it will feel really hard and letting go of something that maybe we weren't always prepared to let go of, but maybe we were. But it all, Pluto is Shiva. It's a death. It's a separation. It's a final goodbye. You know, it's gone. You know, the tsunami just came in and wiped the whole village away. You know, it is this ending.
But it's also the recreation afterwards.
Well, is it? How many myths
I think
about Pluto recreating?
True.
I think it's the Venus star point that comes in right after it. That's the recreation, because the Venus star is about birth. It's about creation. It's about life, fertility, growth, expansion. The Venus star is a fractal that keeps reaching out and repeating and repeating and repeating, never ending. And this is what made me think, where have we gotten the idea? And this is the question. I'm not saying this is the final answer. Where have we gotten the idea that Pluto is rebirth?
Well, I've had Pluto transit over almost every planet in my chart. And I definitely feel like I've been recreating myself all my life.
When the old dies away, yes, we look for new creation, but is it really Pluto that's creating it, or is it that Pluto is just taking away the non-essentials, the things we don't need anymore? And then Venus comes along a little bit later and says, you know, and I don't know that I can tell you from my own experience, having a very heavy Pluto transit in the mid-teens that lasted a lot longer than I wanted it to, because it was connected to a whole T-square and cardinal angles and all that, you know, lasted a very long time. And I kept waiting when it was finally over. The last of the Pluto points was finally finished and it was moving on. I still was waiting for the new life to begin, and it wasn't. And I wait and I thought, okay, I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to do this on my own. Nothing's really showing up here. And then suddenly, not suddenly, but a little time passed, a little more time passed, and new life showed up and a whole new world opened up to me. It's why I'm living in Greece now and all of that. But that's why in some cases I began to think maybe when your Pluto transit is finished, the new life doesn't happen immediately, because you're still in a transition phase between what you've just let go of and what's coming in the future.
What's coming. I'll have to have a look at my past Pluto transits to look at that.
Yeah.
So that brings me to and I'll leave the chart up for a minute, just for the listeners. The cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So, you know, if you've got anything in those signs, this is huge for you. And I know Arielle's going to talk about the new 5-pointed star coming up. But I did a couple of other things I noticed about this are that Venus's last aspects, one, in fact, they're happening today and tomorrow as we record this on October the 17th, just before the Venus Cazimi, are to Mars and Pluto before she conjoins the Sun. And now she's moving away from those. And those are the modern and traditional rulers, Pluto being the modern and Mars being the traditional rulers of the old Scorpio star point. So I just kind of find that really quite astounding that she aspects both of those before she goes into the heart of the Sun and into the throne of the king, as it were, and then launches this new 100-year thing. It's almost as if she's saying goodbye to them, because she's moving away from them, away from those aspects. The opposition to Eris, though, the next Venus star points right through till 2042 or 2032, are going to be opposing Eris. And Eris has been bringing, well, we talked about it, she's been helping Pluto kind of collapse our institutions and the structures that we live under, and revealing the corruption for quite some time. She's been disrupting, and she's a real paradigm shifter. So unless there's anything else Jupiter, you mentioned Jupiter being retrograde in this. Of course, Sedna's in the other Venus ruled sign. Jupiter's about to retrograde into Pisces, where Venus is
it's going back. It's doing a cusp thing too, but they're doing a cusp thing at the the other way. Again, 2 Martian signs going back to 2 Venus signs, which I thought was kind of important, because Jupiter
too.
in Aries is a Mars sign. Aries is a Mars sign. It's going back into Pisces, which is a Venus sign. The star point is Libra in a Venus sign, but it's going to go back to Scorpio for one last pass, which is a Mars sign. So we're having this dance between Mars and Venus. And as you mentioned, the Mars in this chart, it doesn't quite get up to the 29-degree point before it goes retrograde. I think it retrogrades right at this degree here, 25 Gemini. Yeah.
This is the retrograde degree.
We have to wait until like next March when it finally comes out of Gemini to trine this Venus star point in Libra. But Venus and Mars actually, from the mythology and from all we've seen in chart indications, tend to hook up pretty well together. And they're a pretty good attraction. They like each other. Here they are in air signs. I think the air theme is what's really going to be big in the next few decade or two, as well as the cardinal signs. And so going back to what Angela said about, democracy and the birthplace of democracy, I really feel like democracy is having its day in court right now, with all these hearings about the Capitol siege and about what really happened and how a former U.S. president might have incited these riots. And Libra is really about the scales of justice. One of its major points is ruling in the courts. And is it blind justice? Is it totally impartial? Is it taking both sides, which Libra is supposed to do? Or is it, coming up into the idea of, we're going to rule it the way we want to rule it, and we're going to change the rules, which means democracy really is in danger. If we are letting the courts do things that are really not legal, I mean, then I think something like a world court has to step in and say, this is not, or the cosmic court, the goddesses of the cosmic court, who the scales of justice are actually, I believe, symbolized by Estrella, the goddess, the goddess of justice, a starry goddess who actually left the earth plane. Even Mount Olympus, this is above kind of the earth, but in the sphere of the earth, who left the earth plane in total disgust, saying, I'm sick of, these humans goings on and what all this that happens, I'm going up to the stars.
Yes.
So,
but of course, Jupiter is the law as well. And to talk about the scales of justice and the courts and the hearings and all that kind of thing, I think over the discord that's been happening as we approach this Libra star point it's been shown that somebody managed to poke all the holes in the US Constitution to go to the US. He managed to work the Constitution and find things that were kind of gentlemen's agreements before that weren't encoded into law, and has managed to twist it all so that, and he's perhaps not actually broken the law, because there was holes there. There were things that were not written in the Constitution of the supposed one of the greatest democracies on earth, even though we're a republic. Somebody's going to remind me in the comments that we are a republic, because we are, but we're a democratic republic.
It may not have been written. It may not have been written in the law, but it is written somewhere in moral law that a leader of the free world, or a nation that is looked to by so many other countries. I live outside the country now, and I know that I have met people there from all over the world, and they will joke with me and say things. It's been going on for several years now, we still have hope for your country. You know, it's like they may not have hope for their country, but they still have hope for our country. And it's like there are a lot of people batting for us right now. So we need to step up to the plate and, you know, punch it out of the park.
And I get that too from my family and friends back home in the UK. But you know, this really, well, Jupiter is hope as well. This star point itself does give me hope that we are going to regain that balance of powers, balance of justice, all those kind of things. We're going to claw it all back and maybe even tighten it up more over time. But anyway, let's stop sharing that. So let's talk about kind of going forward, the new 5-pointed star. You had something to talk about with that.
Yeah. Did I want to get this up here? Let me put this. Let me get that slide I was looking for.
While Arielle looks, I do kind of want to warn people, you know, that I'm amazed, and I would recommend kind of honoring the day really for this Venus star point. I'm a great fan of kind of doing some little ritual, but don't expect everything to change on a day, because this is a big paradigm shifting, you know, long-term change that we have coming up.
Okay. I had this open before and somehow it didn't stay open, so I'm getting it here.
That's all right.
And I'll share my screen. Zoom. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Share.
There we go. It's coming. So it's on its way.
Basically,
it's not showing yet, actually. Oh,
this is the timeline of the new Venus star point. We're, you know, getting. What am I doing here? I'm trying to get back to there. Okay, I was trying to move this thing. Yeah, so it's 2022 to 2031. It's a long time ahead. This is a whole century of an air sign on the Venus star. You know, there's only 5 points of the star. If you look at this graphic down here, this is a crop circle actually that appeared sometime shortly after the book was published. And I thought, wow, that's cool. In fact, the day that I finished writing the book in July of 2010, there was a crop circle that appeared in, was it England or the Netherlands? One of those two places that had a perfect 5-pointed star on it. And it was the day that I was sending I closed it and I said, okay, it's off to the final editor now. And then this star appeared. Someone sent it to me and I thought, what? He didn't know. The guy that sent it to me didn't know I had just finished working on this book.
Wow.
You know? He just sent me this star thing. Crap. So, anyway.
That's how Venus comes.
So then on these 5 points of the star, you know, there's a Libra point, there's a Gemini point, there's a, you know, all the different signs that it's in. And so every 4 years, what's going to happen from really 2030 up until 2030, 2131 is every 4 years, you're going to get a Libra star point starting at 29 and going all the way back to 0. So if you have any planets in Libra, this is your century.
my North Node's at 0 Libra. I don't know
0. Okay, you're going to have to wait all the way to 2031 to get that one.
Yes, nearly 200 years old. No,
you'll get the 0 Aries point in a few years. So, you know.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have these things going on at different levels. But there's another chart another graph I want to show you in here. And I just put it in this morning. Not there. Here it is.
Mm.
So
There we go.
now what happens when there's 5 points on a star and there's only 4 elements in astrology? Typically, through normal times, there's always one extra element on the star wheel to define the nature of the times. Sometimes it's double Earth, the way it was in the early 20th century, all the way up to, a certain point to the 60s, And then a short period in the 60s, we had double air because we had Gemini and then Aquarius. And if you want to think about the period of 1964 to 1982, when we had double air on the sign, that encompasses the last half of the 60s and all of the 70s and just a couple of early years of the 80s. We had an outpouring of energy of youth speaking out and becoming powerful, actually empowered youth. Gemini star point came in 1964, and it was it came in at 29 Gemini as the last zero Cancer point was leaving. That's called the world axis, the zero cardinal, and basically Gemini. It was like Bob Dylan saying, "The times they are a changing," right as the star point was coming out. He was but right before it, he was recording that song and those lyrics, "The times they are a changing." And of course they were. It was radical social protests. Youth were filling the streets, but suddenly youth became powerful and potent, and they had a voice like they didn't have before then. It's like,
and there was all Woodstock and bra burning and all Vietnam protests and things.
All of that. Yeah. Andy Warhol, I mean,
yes.
It was like it went from, it was just everywhere. The pop culture and the youth movement and the music and the art and the shape of the world at the time was obviously a very exciting time. And those were the last years of the Aquarius star, and Gemini was in there too. It was a newly formed Gemini star and a kind of ending of the Aquarius star. And then it went into Capricorn in the 80s. And when Capricorn came in, I believe the whole Aquarian ideal and spirit of those last years of Aquarius kind of faded. They got, they fell to the earth like a rocket that had just launched, and it was on fire, and suddenly it ran out of fuel and it just went boom. And it came down to the earth, and then, it's taken years for it to reignite. It's still kind of, we're still thick into the Capricorn star. So we have really been bogged down by a lot of, ideas of the sort of the materialism and the corporations and the government partnering with corporations and, people. Aquarius, meaning the idea of human rights and humanity, started losing their rights, and corporations and businesses started gaining their rights and locking people out of, it's like we have even been films come out. Corporations are more powerful than people. They have more rights. In other words, they have more rights, legal.
They do.
Which is absurd when you think about it. Is this absurd that a company has more rights than a person? Okay.
Let's overturn the badly named Citizens United, because it's nothing to do with the citizens. But anyway,
So the other reason I've been kind of excited to get the Libra star on the wheel here is that we're going to have 2 air signs again. We're going to have Gemini, who's still, alive and well. It's only halfway through the Gemini cycle. Came in 1964. It goes to about 2070. And it just reached its peak middle degrees a few years ago when we had the Venus transit through Gemini, and Gemini really produced at that point. But now we're going to have Gemini and Libra, two air signs on the star, and it's going to be a chance again for people, air, our own voices, our own communication to work together. Now, at the same time as Libra is ascending on the star, Aries is descending, because though it's not an exact opposite, what's happening is because Aries is down at the lower degrees now on the star, and it's going to get, it's going to reach zero Aries, kind of shortly here in the next, like in the next decade. And so Aries, Libra's sort of rising and Aries is sort of setting, if you want to think of it that way. And what I think the possibility of that is, the promise of that is that we start cooperating with each other again. We start being nice to each other again. We start listening to each other. In the Aries era, it's become loud and angry. And
because we've had Scorpio and Aries, two Mars ruled points we've had for a long time, right? So,
yeah. People shouting on social media and being very
and a lot of talk about my rights, me, don't take my stuff, all that kind of. Towards the end of it, we've had that much more unhealthy kind of Martian energy, which is not always that way.
It is totally true. The double Mars, really, it's a triple Mars. If you look at Scorpio, who's still kind of there in the background, and Capricorn and Aries, you've got three signs where Mars is empowered.
Yeah, because Mars is exalted, of course.
Yeah, you had no signs of Venus, and now we have at least one sign of Venus coming in to the star, and slowly through time, in 2 more decades, less than that, we'll have another Venus sign coming in Pisces when Aries receives. And then,
Venus is actually the esoteric ruler of Gemini.
Exactly. Of Gemini. Yeah.
In esoteric astrology. So it could be said we have 3 Venus influences. So. Yeah.
And you know how I think that works, Venus being the esoteric ruler of Gemini, is that when we speak or communicate through the heart, that's how Gemini really comes through in the most beautiful way that it possibly can be, and so it is that heart connection. Thank you for reminding me of that, because I had thinking about this lonely star not having any Venus related signs.
But it's not her most related sign now, so it's almost like, but Gemini is kind of about a change, very mutable sign, bringing in the change. It's almost like Venus was creeping in through the Gemini star point. That kind of thing. But anyway. But we've got fire and air, as you say. We've got fire and air.
We're also going to, for the next 2 decades, we're going to have 2 fire signs too. We're going to have Aries and Leo, and this is where the Aries. I think we could make a case for the whole 1920s up till now, when Aries first came in. We could look at most of the 20th century and even till now as the me century, rather than the me generation, just of the baby boomers, because I think with the Aries star, we've been growing in me power, and like you say, my rights, my individual rights, my freedoms. And you can see that's why Capricorn and Aries are square, because Capricorn is, what's laid down by the hierarchy. This is the law. These are the rules. And Aries says, no, I want my rights. You can't just tell me what to do. So that's a square not by
Mm.
degree, but certainly by sign on the star. And if you look at these different relationships and how they, how they work with each other, you've got double fire, which just makes the fire flame grow even brighter.
Feels
anyway.
A bit like a wildfire, really.
Yeah, and it has been. It has been then, and a lot of the earth has been suffering from wildfires in this last period, since we've got these two fire signs on and that's since the 80s, when the star point changed. For the last big change that we had in signs was the 80s, and since the 80s we've had two fire signs, so a double fire theme. And now what's going to shift, we'll still have double fire for a little longer, but we're going to now have double air. What's missing is water. We're not going to have water. 2026 is when Scorpio comes back one last time. I do think it is, the world is also in crisis about water, and this star is even showing it,
Yeah, no water till 2041. So
when Pisces comes in.
And so I think we
are dealing with elemental changes, meaning the elements of the earth, fire, earth, air, and water. The whole world, lives and prospers by those four elements being somewhat in harmony. And
I know of at least 3 people in the last 2 weeks who lost everything in a house fire.
My goodness. Where, in Utah?
No, one in Utah, one in the UK, one in Australia.
Oh my God, all over the world.
All over the world. And, fire and air, whilst it's going to have great creative, Phoenix-like potential as well, it's also got that, I think there's going to be an increase in fires, as we've seen already, and more water shortages, like you said.
Right. So new, with all the rebuilding that goes on after disasters, I know after earthquakes, they have all, in California and other places too, they have all these regulations in now for earthquake proofing homes, and at the foundation as best they can. And I think the same thing has to go for new construction with fire, that these things have to be, because the world, not only can't afford to lose, this is the Pluto. And I've noticed the last few star points have been connected to Pluto one way or another, even though it's 5 different signs. It's the Leo star point of 2019 had the quincunx to Pluto at 19 Capricorn at the time. And the other one, the Capricorn. Capricorn star of 2018 had an exact conjunction of Pluto at 18 Capricorn. And then 4 years later, in early 22, Venus retrograde cycle in Capricorn was going right over Pluto.
It's stationed retrograde conjunct Pluto, right? And and wasn't the via
so we've had a lot of Pluto action on the star, but as we've identified, Pluto is the ending of an old something. It's the wiping out of an old. And so will we want everything to be wiped out that's going to be wiped out? Do we want to lose all the information on our hard drive? Not exactly, but so some of it is going to be something.
Some things are going to have to go.
Some things are going to have to go. We're going to applaud some of the things that are going, but I think it's really more about the consciousness now of how we are. There's obviously every sign, and even the star, you can be working with it in a positive way or a not so positive way.
Of course.
And I think it's a time to be aware, be really aware and conscious.
So to put a little more hopeful spin on it with all of this, I have seen, and Venus, as I see, as very, well, she's very connected to the material world and the earth. She is kind of like, very connected to that and to what we can manifest and make real. But where was I going with that? I've seen a move, and I think we're going to have to do more of it with all this fire and air, of moving back to things like the indigenous fire practices of how they managed fire. Both indigenous people all over the world, but I'm thinking particularly of here in the US and Australia. The indigenous people used to, there was wildfires, or there's always been wildfires, but they used to control it in very healthy, aligned kind of ways of working with the earth, rather than our way of kind of stripping the earth. So perhaps this more Venusian input will bring more balance back in with those things like that as well, of learning to work more and bring more balance to how we work with the earth. So,
Cosmos Pyranos in Greek, Cosmos Pyranos, sacred fire, using fire in a sacred way. And yes, it is something to revere. Fire is a good element. We need it for cooking. We need it for fueling our cars. We need fire. We need fire in our world. But this is like we're talking about here on the star, that for a time it could be the winds whipping up the flames and double fire, double air. It could be, very out of control. When there's when there's an emphasis of elements and a lack of others, things are not balanced. So Libra wants to come in and get things balanced and bring things back. I think the whole 100 years forward, in terms of a good message to leave people with, is that Libra wants to bring things back into balance, and especially with people and between people. And we have to get out of this me culture and get more into a we culture, to get things done, to work together, to be more productive, and to keep our planet happy and healthy, keep ourselves happy and healthy.
And I second all of that. And just to add, to go back to, I think it's really important that Haumea is so almost exactly conjunct to this Venus star point, just by a few minutes. I think she's saying here, you have an opportunity to rebirth something that's more balanced and more in the middle and coming together, bringing people together again. So yeah, it does.
Exactly.
Whilst I think there's going to be some chaos, I think there's a lot of hope in there. So, so is there anything else you want to add? I know I don't want to keep you forever, Arielle, because she's been doing. What did you say before we started? You felt like how these rock bands kind of feel when they have to play the same song night after night. She's been on so many podcasts at the moment. So I'm very glad you came on mine too.
Yes, well, we've had this planned for a long time, and some of the others came up more recently, but I'm happy to be here. We've had a different conversation today than I've had with some of the other programs, which is good, because it's the same subject, and there's so many things to talk about with the star points. We could go, I could do 100 more podcasts, and I'm not going to, but we could do, these videos are available. I want to recommend people who want to learn more, tune into the official Venus Star Point YouTube channel, because all of us, not just myself, but some of the teachers that have become practitioners, certified practitioners, have their own interviews and videos on there, and observations and comments. And there's really a ton of material that you can study from learning about the Venus Star Point from those videos. And also at my website, I've got lots of archival information from past newsletters and so forth, blogs that I've done about the changing of the Venus Star Point from this to that. So we welcome you to come join our growing family around the world of Venus Star Point practitioners. Yeah.
And Arielle's website is sophiavenus.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
And I'll put the link to the Venus Star YouTube channel. This
okay.
I'm uploading it to mine first, but I will upload it to the practitioner's website as YouTube as well. So please follow us both.
Good. Here's the
there's the website.
Is the website. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can highly recommend getting this book as well. You know, that she's at the back of the book, there's a list of all the Venus star points going right back to 1750 and up to 2049. We could go further back as well, but yeah. So, and I'm looking forward to the Pisces star as well, but you know, I'm not going to rush my life away because I'll be really old by the time that comes.
And I'll be even older, and I don't know if I'll make it through to that one, but it would be nice if I did.
But it's a great shift anyway. So yeah, as Arielle says at the end of that, you know, just read this slide, you know, let's hope that the earth can hold herself together until we get there, and may peace be with you, because we're in a huge transition with a lot of hope, and I think it's actually going to bring great things eventually.
Mm-hmm. And I want to leave everybody with one word. If you listen to this before October 22nd, I'm planning ceremony at a sacred spot here near Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I really invite all of you to create a ceremony somewhere where you are living or nearby. Get a few people together. If you can't get anybody together, just do it in your own garden or in, you know, your own space. But as a way to just really welcome the new Venus star point coming into play for the next 100 years. And
I agree.
Venus onto the star. It's like a party for Venus. Hey, you're on the star. You're on your own star now.
and do you? Oh, I meant to ask you one quick question before you go. Do you use the 17 minutes Cazimi for either side of the exact conjunction as we do with Mercury?
Yeah, it's what the ancients came up with. I think that's fair.
So I did the time.
I would go a little further within a degree. You know, within a degree of the Cazimi, but on mountain time, I think the exact time mountain time where you and I live is 3:17. Yeah, 3 in the afternoon.
It's 3:17 on the 22nd. But it gets within 17 minutes on Friday, on Venus Day, at around 1:15 p.m. Mountain, and doesn't leave 17 minutes until almost 5 p.m. on the 23rd Mountain Time. Which is
good. So we have a nice window of, you know, depending on where you are in the world, you can use that window. Yeah.
So don't worry if you can't do a ceremony right on the Cazimi, because you know you might be in bed or something, or have but you know, any time within those 2 days, really, Friday afternoon, Western Mountain Time to Sunday early evening. Find yourself time to do some kind of ceremony.
Be prepared, getting into that space. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Arielle. It's been a real pleasure. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to check Arielle's book out. Check her website out, sophiavenus.com, and also the Venus official YouTube channel, where I'll be posting this as well. Again, I'll put the links in the show notes. So I'll see Arielle very soon, because we have practitioner meetings, which are awesome. So if you want to become a Venus practitioner, Venus star practitioner, you get those as well. For now.
Thank you, Louise. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for having me and doing this wonderful podcast that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, go with Venus.